Hey guys, how you doing today?
Good,
Thank you.
Excellent. So I got here today with James and Ty from our team. James is in our product team, Ty is in our data science team, and want to talk a little bit about the evolution of data science and how the data science teams are going to change and evolve on the road to artificial general intelligence. So really excited to have you here, guys. You are there, every day in the real world, solving real customer problems. And so I think people will love to learn from you how you see, the next steps, like what happens today versus what you expect to happen tomorrow, all the way to kind of the end state where we have, the AI data scientists, the tiger in a box that we can just unleash in an enterprise, and maybe Tag, you could just manage the entire of a Fortune 100 company all by yourself. Tag plus AI data scientists, all of Walmart, something like that. So that's kind of the final state, and but let's talk about how we get there. So maybe we'll start talking a little bit about the world today. Where are we today? And how do you how is it different from maybe what you were doing just 6 months ago?
Sure. In terms of my experience, I think there's a lot of different tasks in data science, and in particular, a lot of it is spent on quite manual, boring tasks, particularly around data cleaning and maintenance and stuff. So I think when we work with industry and kind of large enterprises, there's a huge amount of maybe things in production, pipelines that they have to manage and maintain and stuff. So we see a lot of data science time spent on that, and potentially less time for like innovation projects or like kind of new things. So I think from the data scientist perspective, you do end up spending a lot of your time on the things that you don't find particularly interesting. So for me, what I would hope, I guess, or would want to see is we can start to spend less time on those more manual, repeatable tasks, and be able to move to more interesting things.
Yeah, and I think as well what we're seeing when we're having conversations with customers is there's obviously this wave that we're seeing of co-pilots, this concept of acceleration. And I think something that would be great to dive into today is the difference between acceleration and automation. Because for a lot of people it's like, oh, they're the same thing, make me faster, or make me more faster. That's probably what it sounds like to a lot of people. But there is a really important distinction there that I think we can explore as well. But yeah, what we are seeing is that a lot of these companies, those boring tasks are getting automated or supported and accelerated by co-pilots. So help me do the EDA, help me do the plotting, help me do the data cleaning. But that's really key, is what we're seeing is acceleration creep in right now. But something that is, we're going to explore is how automation can change and how custom AI data scientists can help your business.
And I do find with the current co-pilots that because it's effectively mostly code generation at this point in time, there's not that multimodal support for like actually interpreting results, interpreting plots and all these sorts of things. So that's the typical output that a data scientist might interact with. And like currently LLMs are particularly optimized for that. So the co-pilot writes code for you, but unless you're writing very large blocks of code like a software engineer, I do find the acceleration is actually significantly slower or smaller. I typically use it much more for just using libraries I'm not particularly familiar with in the open source, just to not have to learn the syntax, but it's not necessarily a huge accelerator if I've done it before.
So I guess if we are saying that in the world of data science, the co-pilot, the accelerators are good, but they're not going to change our world. Let's talk a little bit about some of our experiences in the real world, where we've actually created digital workers, digital data scientists, kind of AI data scientists that are actually able to complete entire use cases by themselves, so that Ty, instead of you directly helping a customer, you create an AI data scientist so they can kind of self-serve themselves. Can we talk a little bit about this? Because I think that's where we're seeing in kind of step one of the transition from where we are now to where we're next, which is kind of probably going to be interesting for the audience as well, that the world of data science isn't quite like the world of software engineering. As you said, it's like shorter code, but we actually have an opportunity to create this specialized agents that can automate an entire use case, and there's probably kind of a lot of value there, as we've seen. I guess the other big difference between software engineering and data science is that when you create a AI data scientist for a specific use case, you're closer to the money, right? Like you have the ability to change outcomes that sometimes are measured in the billions, right? So maybe take us a little bit through that, because I think it's going to be kind of interesting for the audience to hear.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think when I mentioned earlier about the kind of the maintenance of existing models, I think that's something where whenever we've interacted with data science teams, that's something they spend a lot of the time in. It's not necessarily actually improving a model or anything like that, but say a business stakeholder from a specific region will ask you for a specific insight for their, specific cohort of customers or something like that, or run a different analysis with a slightly different set of parameters. Oh, actually, we've introduced this new type of intervention we can do in the world. Can we rerun our analysis with this? And from the data science perspective, there's nothing particularly new. It's just, changing a filter here, changing a parameter there, etc. But it does just take time. You need to run through that whole validation steps, etc. again. So what we've done with some of our customers is really around taking those repeatable tasks that we can identify. Okay, we know business stakeholders over the next month are going to pester us with this. There's going to be 30 people from all these different states around the US. They're going to come to us and they're going to ask for specific insights. We don't have to build 50 different slides. Instead, we can actually just take a custom agent, give it the context, and once we've done it once, we can show this is what you would have to do. This is the type of thing you would need to change. This is where you would need to modify it. And really then just enable the business stakeholder to be able to come in and ask the agent that question instead. So then I can focus on actually doing substantial improvements as opposed to just running, say, repeated analysis.
And I think it may be interesting to share the differences between this approach, creating an AI data scientist, a digital worker, versus taking like a predictive model or a model and putting it in an MLOps system. Can we talk a little bit about the big differences between these two things? As you were kind of alluding to, you would like a far more flexibility than just like a hard-coded model in an MLOps system, right? So maybe James and Tyke, let's talk a little bit about the differences here, because I think it's such a big difference that it's important for people to kind of appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the real difference is definitely flexibility. It's that actually changing the inputs, changing the parameters. It's very easy to retrain a model and just set a script to retrain it every week. Having to do that doesn't require an agent, doesn't require flexibility. But let's say you have access to a new data set or some new source that you think might be interesting. And when you're introducing that and exploring that, there might be all this kind of alignment, feature engineering, all these sorts of things you need to do. That's harder to automate. And you can use things like AutoML, but then you can get completely different results to before. So you want to be able to kind of inject it into the current pipeline. And I think, that sort of flexibility allows you to do those sorts of tasks or run effectively new analysis. So previously, you might have been looking at forecasting. Now you want to actually do attribution. And you want to be using the same model to get coherent and consistent results. But your previous pipeline was just a forecasting pipeline. So you need to add in effectively this module, which isn't something that an MLOps would do. You need to take a specific model, depending on what it is.
You would have to go back to a data science team, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas
so that's that sort of, I'll call it pestering, but not to piss off business people, it's you're kind of going back and asking these questions over.
Whereas if you create an AI data scientist and you give it to the business, they feel like they're interacting almost with a human, like, because they've asked something new that wasn't kind of pre-coded before. Now they have an experience of, it's kind of equivalent to my lab going back, and building stuff.
And it's a better experience for everyone, I think, because it's faster response times for the business stakeholder. It's more time spent on, the new and the novel for the data scientist. So effectively everybody can win. You can kind of hand off those kind of repeat
So
tasks.
that's step one. So this is, where we're going to be seeing a lot of value now, is creating this AI data scientist for specific use cases. And James, can you take us through what are some of the critical capabilities one would need to have in order to manufacture these digital AI data scientists?
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, sure. So what we're thinking is, and how we view this from a product perspective, is looking at it in sort of three main steps, which we're calling our master plan. And so what we have right now is the ability to develop custom AI data scientists, as Tyg mentioned. But what we move into after that is what we're calling semi-autonomous AI data scientists, and then fully autonomous AI data scientists. So really that equivalent of like a drop-in AI data scientist. So Tyg in a box that we can that any department can have access to, so they can have Tig there and answer all of their data science questions. And so in terms of when we're looking into that difference between acceleration and automation, and we're looking into these words like semi and fully autonomous, what's interesting is that you actually require a whole different architecture to your data science team and how the business engages with data science. And so at a high level, what we see is much more need for managerial-like functions and features in a product. So moving from this world of acceleration where you're helping me do the doing faster, to Tig is now making sure that things that are getting done to the correct standard, but you are now disconnected from the actual task of the doing. And that's really, to that point that I made previously, is that difference between acceleration and automation is really decoupling Tig from the actual changing of the code, the doing of the work, the delivering of the results. And so when we look at that from a product perspective, what you really need is you need the ability to manage these agents or these AI data scientists. You need the ability to monitor them for performance, monitor them for drift, monitor for, are they sort of handling out of scope questions well? Are they responding or protecting against malicious attacks? So management and monitoring is absolutely key. And then also when you're building these autonomous AI data scientists, there's also, when you're building them, you need to be able to test them and evaluate them thoroughly. So if you have a scope within a department and you're making an AI data scientist for sales forecasting, you're probably going to want it to handle these 3 avenues of questioning pretty well and robustly. And so, constructing, standardized evaluation pipelines and being able to evaluate these AI data scientists with every single tweak you make is also really key.
So the what I'm hearing here is that we want to create a world in which Tig is no longer serving the business directly, one query at a time. Instead, right now, having the ability to manufacture this digital AI data scientists, but then as you're manufacturing, tens and hundreds and thousands of them, well, then you need a completely different product to make sure to maintain these things. Like, have a one-on-one with your agents, like check if they're behaving. Have a training program, have an evaluation, like an interview program to make sure they're still, fit for the job. So all this like a completely new paradigms of products that just simply don't exist today, right? Like you wouldn't be able to maintain a swarm of AI data science agents in a MLOps solution or something like that. It just requires completely different technology.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because the output is so much more flexible, there's not as much of a standardized framework for it. You need to be able to interact with them quite differently. And I would also say on the building, I think the building is extremely important right now because currently we're sort of decoupling it where you solve it once. You build the custom worker, the AI data scientist to solve a specific task or solve a specific pipeline. So now you're doing it once, and every time you have to redo it, you can now offload that and you need to manage them moving forward. But I guess we're viewing as the sort of next step, we can actually move beyond even me having to solve it once. Instead, we can look at much more completely management where I can now delegate as opposed to teach them how to do it once in the first place.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that definitely speaks to that last final stage of full autonomy, right? Like that's something that we're looking into is, and research teams in Causal Lens are actually looking into this right now, is how does this
very actively
is like, how does this new user experience look like? Like we look around in the market, we look around in the world, and we just see things that we've seen for the last 20 years that are trying to adapt. And I think what we're taking a different approach here, and we're saying, well, what are the fundamentals that we're going to need to have in our experience that are going to be able to make Tig an effective chief of staff? And what we're seeing is that a lot of those things we're looking into are similar to the functions of HR software. Because as these things get more and more autonomous, you're going to want to manage them exactly, Darko, as you said. Like, what does the performance review look like? How do you make sure they're...
Who gets a promotion?
Who gets a promotion? How do you make sure they're performing within their lane? And can you expand that? Is there opportunities for them to grow?
Actually, on that promotion point, would you see kind of the semi-autonomous agents, after they behave themselves well and you've been able to track their performance, would they then, would the promotion in the world of agents be like, okay, you were semi-autonomous, you had to ask me things once a week. Well, now I can promote you to a fully autonomous thing where I can, maybe check on you, once a year or something. Like, would that, could you see kind of that world, or I would completely.
Yeah, I mean, I
otherwise.
guess to a certain extent we're already doing it. Obviously, now we're currently, say, replacing the model or upgrading the LLM to the latest LLM, etc., to improve that capability. But I guess you build trust. So, like, you're going to initially build these things with guardrails and test the edges, test the boundaries. And as you kind of test that and find the robustness, you can relax those guardrails. So initially, you might constrain it to, say, one specific use case. And if you find it's kind of working consistently, you can actually relax those and test the new boundaries and continuously sort of expand those boundaries. So in the same way, that is akin to promotion, where you're expanding its remit, expanding how much you trust it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, as a product manager, I love product feedback. And so what's amazing with semi-autonomous or fully autonomous agents is that with a strong evaluation, structure or framework in a product, what you're able to do is actually understand exactly where the business wants your agents to grow. So if you have a semi-autonomous agent doing sales forecasting, but there's a series of questions and they're saying, hey, I want you to answer this, I want you to solve this problem, and the agent keeps saying, oh no, I can't, I'm bound by this. That can, in the product that we're researching and developing, the ability to go, okay, well, there's demand in this area. And so these semi-autonomous agents can naturally expand as they build trust in the business, people use them more, you can see exactly what's being asked and say, okay, well, let's expand it here. There's a massive amount of value to be unlocked. Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit about like this kind of groundbreaking features we've just released in the product around the creation as well as the evaluation of these newly created digital workers? Could we maybe make it a bit more concrete so people can kind of understand how do we create a digital AI data scientist, digital worker AI data scientist, and how do we ensure that it's kind of allowed to interact with the real world right off the gate?
Yeah, sure. So what we've actually just released is our ability to build these custom AI data scientists in our product and then also test them and evaluate them. So in that building experience, we've got our agentic framework, and we focused with that to be on flexibility. So we don't want to constrain you to, and some solutions, I won't name names, but when you jump into the world of low code interfaces or you jump into the world of drag and drop, you're naturally restricted. And so what we wanted to do is not take away the flexibility from people like Tig and empower him to design whatever he would like. And so when we're looking at how that manifests in the product, agents can be customized, obviously, as we've seen by the choice of LLM, the choice of the settings within that, so things like temperature, but then also expanding that to, as we know, system prompts. But then also beyond that, really what makes them truly agentic is the ability to write custom tooling. And then also add in knowledge graphs and RAG stores. So that really enables you to build agents that are really, really entrenched and familiar with your business. So they really, truly do represent someone who has, who's been there for a year, who's been there for 2 years, who knows the acronyms. They know it's not, Darko, what does, ABC or XYZ mean? They know all of this and they've got all the context.
And I think that ties into, we talk a lot about trust as well when we're selling like an enterprise system. You want to be able to build it on your specific domain. You want to have, a library of tools, etc. So that if one data scientist builds an agent and another data scientist builds an agent, one's using this type of approach, one's using this type of approach. By having this sort of shared library or kind of platform that you're all using, you can kind of, get more reliable, robust tools, etc., more reliable, robust approaches.
And that does two things, right? One, it accelerates the creation of the next digital worker, your next AI data scientist for the enterprise, but it does something even bigger, which is effectively collects training data to be able to build autonomous, semi-autonomous and autonomous agents in the future as well, that will be able to kind of do it without a lot of human input.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Darko, just to jump in on your point, is like, it's really about that reusability. And so what we don't want you to have to do is create one agent and it takes you, let's say, 30 minutes, an hour to create a semi-autonomous agent, and then the next one also takes 30 minutes to an hour. We failed from a product perspective, if it doesn't take you less time. And so the ability with that tool reusability is, yes, standardization, but also really, really enabling people to move quickly, because we know it's not 1, 2, 3 use cases in your business. As these agents allow you to do more and more data science, you're going to want to expand this way beyond your core use cases.
Yeah. And I think you also want, if I say build an agent and then a month later I build another agent that actually uses similar functionality, not only do I want to say not have to rebuild that tool, but also let's say I improve that tool and actually improve its capability. I want that rising tide to raise all the ships as well.
Yeah.
I want to be able to go back, and my previous agents are now also getting better because I'm now working on similar tasks that can all kind of improve from that.
And in the context of the enterprise, it's very hard for an enterprise to hire like 10 times, right? Like they may be lucky, very lucky if they have one. And so you want a world in which, you've created, tools and solutions and agents, agents that then when, a junior data scientist comes in, like a, new grad or something, they can kind of punch above their weight. They can be like, hey, let me just take the agents that Tyke built and let me very quickly kind of adopt them, modify them, and now I've just created another AI data scientist, another digital worker for a similar use case. If we're sitting here, I don't know if it's 1, 2, or 3 years or 4, it depends who you ask, but we are close to artificial superintelligence, AGI, whatever you want to call it. How does the world of data science look like in that end state?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely see if we have fully autonomous agents that are as good at data science as any data scientist. I think, that whether it's management, chief of staff, whatever we call it, I think becomes the final boundary there. It's really just going to be about looking after this and aligning incentives, aligning the direction of what work is being done and what's being deployed. So I'd really see it as that sort of high level mode where you're monitoring an army, a staff, a department, etc. And you could even have hierarchies within that. We talked about promotion earlier, but you can have agents delegating to other agents, etc. in this autonomous system.
Yeah, completely. And I think as well, building on that, when you look at that from how does that impact the business, you're looking at a world where fundamentally you can now drop in data science capability without having to drop in data science headcount. Mm-hmm. And so that fundamentally makes your, the architecture of your teams look completely different. So data science your data science team now becomes a managerial function, and more of an oversight thing, and allows every business department fundamentally to have a data scientist with them answering their questions for basically the cost of inference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it will be fascinating to have a conversation with Max, with Zach, and others on the team that are actually pushing the boundaries and building this fully autonomous AI data scientists. So perhaps we'll leave that for another time with those guys to tell us a bit more about like the how behind that and how we're pushing the boundaries. But this was fascinating, guys. Thank you so much for sharing with the world, how do we imagine the world of data science today, tomorrow, and the end state.